Throughout human history, warfare has shaped the destiny of nations. We study the tactics of Napoleon. We analyze the brutality of the trenches. We look at the great clashes of civilization, the Romans versus the Carthaginians, the Allies versus the Axis. But in 1932, the continent of Australia faced a threat unlike any other. It was an invasion force of 20,000. A mobile infantry that required no supply lines, an enemy that knew no fear and felt no pity. They did not come from across the ocean, they came from within. This is not a story of glory, it is a story of hubris. This is the story of the Great Emu War. To understand the tragedy, we must first understand the men who fought it. Western Australia, the Campion district. The soil here is red, hard, and unforgiving. The men farming this land were veterans of the Great War, soldiers who had survived the mud of the Somme and the hell of Gallipoli. The government had promised them a hero's reward, land to grow wheat, a quiet life of peace. But peace is a lie in the outback. By 1932, the Great Depression had brought the economy to its knees. Wheat prices collapsed. These men were already fighting starvation. They were fighting the bank. And then, the migration began. It started as a rumble on the horizon. Normally, the emu migrates to the coast after the breeding season, but that year, they found something new. They found the veterans' farms. They found irrigation channels. They found miles of cultivated wheat. To an emu, this wasn't a farm. It was a paradise. 20,000 birds. They descended like locusts. They broke through the rabbit-proof fences, tearing holes in the perimeter. They trampled the crops. They fouled the water. The veterans watched helplessly as their livelihoods were devoured by 6-foot-tall prehistoric monsters. The farmers were soldiers. They knew how to handle a rifle. But a bolt-action rifle against a swarm of 20,000 is useless. They didn't need pest control, they needed an army. So a delegation of ex-soldiers traveled to Perth. They marched into the office of the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pearce. These men didn't ask for poison, they didn't ask for traps, they asked for machine guns. Sir George Pearce was a man who liked a show of force. He saw an opportunity. The government was losing popularity. A military operation against a pest would show the public that the government was taking action. It was a PR stunt. He authorized the deployment of the Royal Australian Artillery. He gave them a cinematographer to capture the glory. He believed it would be target practice. He had no idea he was signing his own political death warrant. Enter Major G.P.W. Meredith, commander of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery, a military man, disciplined, confident. He arrived in Campion with the arrogance of the British Empire behind him. His force was small, but his firepower was devastating. He brought Sergeant S. McMurray and Gunner J. O'Halloran, and he brought the weapon that had conquered the trenches of Europe, the Lewis automatic machine gun, capable of firing 500 rounds per minute. Meredith looked at the mobs of flightless birds and did the math. Bullets are faster than legs. Flesh is weaker than lead. He predicted a short campaign, a massacre. He ordered his men to set up positions. The stage was set. The cameras were rolling. The war had begun.
November 2nd, the first engagement. The men sighted a group of 50 emus near Campion. The birds were grazing, unaware of the death pointed at them. The locals attempted to herd them into a kill zone. Major Meredith gave the signal. The Lewis gun roared to life. Dust kicked up. The noise was deafening. But then, something impossible happened. The emus didn't panic, they strategized. At the first sound of gunfire, the mob split. They broke into small, scattered groups running in erratic, zigzag patterns.
It was a maneuver that would make a cavalry commander proud. The machine gunners swept the barrel left and right, trying to track 100 different targets moving at 30 miles per hour. The bullets hit the dirt, they hit the fence posts, but they rarely hit the birds. Out of hundreds of rounds fired, perhaps a dozen birds fell. The rest vanished into the bush. Major Meredith was stunned. The enemy had retreated, but they had not surrendered.
2 days later, a new plan. Major Meredith realized he couldn't chase them on foot. He laid an ambush near a local dam. 1,000 emus were heading for the water. This was the perfect choke point. The soldiers waited, breath held, fingers on triggers. They let the birds get close, point-blank range. This would be the end of the war. The gunner opened fire. 12 birds fell instantly, and then silence. The gun jammed. A mechanical failure at the critical moment. As the soldier frantically tried to clear the chamber, the remaining birds scattered into the tree line. It was as if the emus had sabotage agents on the inside. The birds seemed to mock them.
Meredith was losing his mind. He tried mounting the Lewis gun on a truck to chase them down, a 1930s drive-by shooting, but the terrain was too rough. The truck bounced so violently that the gunner couldn't aim. The emus, running effortlessly over the rocks, easily outpaced the vehicle. One emu, later described as a plumed leader, stood his ground while his comrades escaped, taking 5 bullets and remaining standing. Meredith wrote in his field notes, "These birds are like Zulus. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks." By November 8th, the writing was on the wall. 2,500 rounds of ammunition had been fired. The confirmed kill count was less than 50. The press got hold of the story. Headlines across the world laughed at the Australian military. The Emu War. Birds won, Army zero. In Parliament, questions were raised. The cost of the operation was scrutinized. It was a humiliation. Sir George Pearce ordered the withdrawal. Major Meredith and his men packed up their guns. They left the Campion district defeated. The farmers watched them go, then looked back at their fields, where the emus were arguably now eating even more wheat than before.
We study history to learn from our mistakes, and the lesson of 1932 is clear. Nature does not always bow to technology. We can build guns that fire 500 rounds a minute. We can build trucks and maps and strategies, but against the sheer, chaotic will to survive, we are often powerless. The government eventually solved the problem not with soldiers, but with bounties. But the legend remains. The only war on Australian soil where the invaders won. The Great Emu War. Lest we forget. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into history's strangest conflict, hit the like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, who would win today, the emus or a drone strike?